Hi, Quiet Liz, and today I thought I would talk about, well, starting hormones. Or rather, when I started, and, the amusing way that it happened, I guess is probably how I'll put it. So, there's a few factors that are kind of amusing that came about with hormones. Um, I am fortunate enough to live in an area where there are several therapists, psychiatrists, not psychiatrists, psychologists who are not just trans knowledgeable, but trans friendly, to say the least. Um, so, in that sense, I'm cognizant that I'm very lucky and grateful that that happened to be my experience. Um, so, started to go see a therapist as I knew the proper procedure, so to speak, in terms of getting the ball rolling to get hormones, estradiol or estrogen specifically, titty skittles for others. I don't know what other like names have come up with them. That one's just stuck with me. Anyways, so I met with my therapist and went over the whole notion of like being trans, and they were pretty much like, cool. It's like, well, if you say you're trans, then you're trans. Is there anything in terms of like life or work environment that you want to talk about that you're concerned? And so we began to talk about life and such. And I was too scared to ask for my letter because at the time, most doctors, I, I don't believe it was like a legal requirement. I just know that most doctors and insurance companies required a letter from a therapist or a psychologist denoting that I think at the time, and I think even now as I make this video, that I would be essentially diagnosed with gender dysphoria, I think is the term. Um, Whatever. Basically, a piece of paper that says, yes, this person is someone who should get hormones. Um, so I was scared to ask for that piece of paper. But at the same time, I was also getting to talk to the therapist and essentially voice concerns, thoughts, things of that nature. And so second session goes by and I still like we still haven't talked about hormones and like starting them in terms of like the logistics, so to speak. And the third session, which is kind of amusing because so the third session pretty much, if I remember correctly, just about started or nearly started with me asking for a letter. At which point they were like, "Yeah, sure, I'll write you a letter," and I was like, "Oh, that seemed really easy." And then towards the end of the session, I was like, "Okay, screw it, I'm gonna ask," and I asked them, was like, "So if I would have asked for the letter our first session, would you have been up for writing it?" And the response was, "Sure. I mean, the only reason I didn't bring it up is because I figured you weren't ready." And I was just kind of like, I looked at them and I was like, well, crap. Yeah, okay, I could see that point. I mean, if I wasn't willing to ask for it, I guess I wasn't ready. And so that became kind of like one of the amusing aspects of things. I was aware that like the way that I wanted to handle hormones was that I wanted to be on hormones for a little while before coming out because I knew I didn't have to be out full time to be on hormones, um, which is nice. And I know that that varies from place to place, um, which again I'm grateful for having that opportunity. Um, So as a result, I was not out at work at this point. Not out. I mean, outside of being out to my friends, my family, and my yeah, no, my friends and family. That was pretty much it that I was out to. Um, well, and obviously the therapist. Um, I was still presenting uh, masculine clothes manner, I guess. I don't know. I always sucked at that whole. I don't know. I was never very good at pretending to be a boy. I don't know how else to put it, really. So I attempted that while dressing in a masculine fashion and while growing my hair out. So, it was just a whole cluster of confusion. But what was amusing is that because I didn't know of a primary care physician who was trans friendly, I only knew of a OBGYN who, well, I knew of a couple OBGYNs, oddly enough, who were willing to do trans related healthcare in terms of hormones. Um, so that's what I opted for. And so the process for me was basically, hey, I have my letter. I want my hormones. And the response was, okay, cool. You've got your letter. That's great. That covers the insurance aspect of things and that covers my liability and whatnot. But I want you to take blood work first. And I was like, oh, but I want my pills now. At least said that in my head. I wasn't clumsy enough to say it out loud. um, I think she could tell though. She's like, I need to get a baseline so that I know where your hormone levels are now, since you haven't gotten any hormone tests before with any other doctors. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. And I was like, and then we can schedule a follow up. And it was like, okay, cool. The sooner you get your blood test done, the sooner we can schedule that follow up. And I'm like, all right, so tomorrow I have to find a place to do this. I don't remember at this point if it was literally the day after or not. Um, but it was shortly thereafter. And what was amusing was that when I came back for my follow up, um, she was like, so have you ever done steroids? And I kind of looked at her really confused and I was like, no, do I look like the type of person who would do steroids? And her response was, well, no, but then again, you kind of like can't really judge who does and doesn't, and you may have done it a while ago. And I was like, okay, so why is this question being brought up? And apparently, I had nearly double the amount of normal testosterone, or well, what falls into the normal range, I should say. So yeah, uh, I got a kick out of that because I was like, so what you're saying is effectively, if roid rage was a thing in terms of like steroids, I would totally be an angry, angry person. And natural testosterone has nothing to do with anger and aggressiveness. She's like, well, no, it doesn't. And I was like, cool. Because that part never added up with the whole like trying to be a guy sort of thing. I don't know. But, that's just more complicated stuffs. Um, so yeah, at the time, in addition to estradiol, I ended up getting put on spironolactone and finasteride. And the reason for finasteride was that one of the, I believe it's one of the side effects, um, is it also happens to be an androgen. And it took a mixture, various different amounts, um, for each of those, and about 6 months to figure out what my regular dosage was going to be. The other benefit of like finasteride is hair growth, which I got lucky enough to have some. Let's see if I can get. So like there are these tiny hairs here that are there we go. Let's rotate correctly. Like that have been growing out slowly, and like it's kind of interesting because this used to go way, 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 way back, like around here. So, yeah. Um, Yay for that. Something that might be relevant and helpful for others. Because, baldness is a thing that's, I guess, common with older transitioning people. Um, so yeah, that was the start of my hormones and the amusing aspect of things in terms of like, apparently I had really high levels of testosterone, and yeah, perks of finasteride. I never did progesterone, so I have no idea about that. Um, but yeah, so that was that. In any case, that's all for today. So bye.